I think the worst thing to be in is wanting to do something, not daring to do it, not making a decision that you're going to do the other thing, but always lamenting that I should be doing this, I should be doing it, but I don't dare to. And one day when you're too old and you retire, you'll always ask yourself, I could have been an entrepreneur.
Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Mothership Help Desk. I'm your host Drew. As always, I am joined by I have been told that I should call them associates, my associates, Alfie and Pris. How are you guys doing this week?
Great. Yes.
I was doing great until I walked into the toilet at our office.
Oh.
I was having a good week until I walked into the toilet in our office yesterday. And let me tell you, there was so much pee. It was a cubicle.
Oh, yeah.
It was so for those, our producer Yat just then said that he only uses the cubicles. But okay, I'm gonna say there was so much pee on the seat. It was nuts. It was like, it felt like the person who used that cubicle before me, like he saw himself missing and then he decided, I'm gonna miss the whole time.
No,
he didn't correct.
Yeah, his goal was to not go in.
Yeah, honestly, it felt that way.
Yeah.
Like he was trying to make sure that the seat was as wet as possible.
No, you know that's why I don't sit on public toilets.
At all.
Like I only
I thought it
sit...
would be better for women's toilets.
No.
Oh my god.
We don't talk about the period bloods. The period bloods,
we don't talk about that on
No,
this
but
show.
I don't sit on public toilets. I don't understand how people can sit on public toilets. Like, you are exposed and you are exposing yourself to many other bacterias.
Yes.
So
bacterias.
Bacterias.
Yeah.
I can't sit on public toilets.
Wow.
Yeah. Do you guys
This
sit?
is a big revelation.
I do sometimes,
Sometimes.
but it's tough. We actually have a girls chat for our company, and like it's supposed to, I don't know what's the purpose of it, but basically all the updates every day is about the situation in the toilet.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that toilet needs to be cleaned.
Yeah.
But I've seen the auntie. She does a good job.
No, she does a good job. It's not the auntie.
It's the other people using the toilet.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know who you are. The guy who caused that scene. Do you know? Okay, something about me I must say. Like when I use a public toilet and it's really messy, I must clean it afterwards.
Wow.
I have
Wait, your own mess.
No, other people's, because I don't want someone
I will just go to the next.
Yeah, I will just go to the
Okay,
next
so that's what I did yesterday because it was so intense that like I'm not going to touch this. But I feel like I don't want people to see me come out of that cubicle and then go in again
and
afterwards.
then they'll think that it's
They
you.
think I'm the monster.
Yeah,
they think I'm the
that it's
monster.
you.
Yeah, I can't.
Okay.
I can't have that reputation. I can't have that be my reputation.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you know what public toilets I will sit on? Okay, wait, maybe not a public toilet, but a toilet that is not in my home. Toilets at hotels.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like Banyan
Because-
Tree hotels.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
That is opening next year.
definitely. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's a good segue, I think, for our guest today. So let's get to the episode. My guest today is the founder and executive chairman of the Banyan Group, a hospitality empire boasting some of the swankiest, most exclusive hotels across 22 countries. In 2020, CNA called him easily one of Singapore's most recognizable entrepreneurs, and he is so recognizable that he doesn't even need LinkedIn. And I know this because I checked when I was looking for info to put in this intro. Thank you so much for joining us on Help Desk, Mr. Kwon Ping.
Yay.
Thank you. Okay, I've got my two Help Desk interns with me, Alfie and Pris, right? And I'm trying to teach them about making small talk with important people. So I'm going to give them an opportunity to do small talk with, one of Singapore's premier entrepreneurs.
We can talk about the weather if you want to start. But what else are you going to do small talk about?
I mean,
Okay,
we
go
can
ahead,
talk.
Alfie.
We can talk about anything.
Yeah.
You start.
How? What do you eat for lunch? What do you have for lunch?
Oh, I had a great lunch. It was somebody I had not seen for a long time, an ex-director who invited me to this little restaurant I can make a pitch for. It's called Voyage.
Voyage. Okay.
Super cool restaurant. Don't you guys know it at all?
No.
Well, I am ashamed.
We're not cool enough.
We're not cool enough. It's at Outram Road, and unfortunately, they're likely to be closing down. I think you're aware of all the news in Singapore about how You know, a lot of eateries are closing down
Yeah.
because but people are not spending money and so on. So let me make a pitch for them as
Wow,
a young
okay.
chef. It's my first time there.
Yeah.
Really great food, a mix of Japanese and not fusion-y, but contemporary Japanese, etc. It's at Outram Road, exactly where I can't remember, but it's called The Voyage.
Wow.
So please, everybody there, please go. And I'm not getting any commission from this. Okay.
Do you like Japanese food?
Very much. I actually have an apartment in Japan. I go there a lot because we're doing a lot of projects in Japan. It's probably our fastest growing region right now. We've got the Banyan Tree Kyoto just opened, and we're opening up about 6 or 7 Banyan Trees. So I go to Japan very often. I just came back from Japan about 3 or 4 days ago. I'm going again in October. So yeah, I really do like Japanese food a lot.
Okay, and Banyan Tree is known for its like off the beaten path, kind of like hidden gem kind of things, right? So what's your hidden gem recommendation for Japan?
Well, okay. But the hidden gem that we really have across the whole group right now, and one which has won the most awards, is probably in Buahan in Ubud,
Okay.
where we built a property that was, by even our sort of relatively unorthodox standards, pretty unorthodox.
Yeah.
Its sort of tagline is "No doors, no walls."
Oh,
And it's actually a very big villa with private swimming pool and no doors, no walls, but no mosquitoes, nothing. It's the weather is beautiful. You're so isolated that without doors or walls, you can walk around naked. Nobody will see you, etc. and it's doing phenomenally well, really well, over 1,000 Singapore dollars a night.
yeah.
I guess in Japan, one of the places we're looking at, and that's the sub-brand we have called Banyan Tree Escape, rather than a mainstream Banyan Tree. One of the places we're looking at right now is along the Nakasendo Trail, which I'm not sure you've heard of, but
Never heard
but
of
it's
it.
just there used to be Kyoto, and then Edo was Tokyo, right? And those were the two big sort of kingdoms or fiefdoms of Japan, if you watch Japanese warrior movies and so on. And they used to have 2 trails linking one center to another. One was along the coastal line and the other was through the mountains. The mountains trail has been there for centuries, and much of it is at the lower levels have been sort of transformed by highways and so on. But at a certain section, it's the same trail with the postal sort of villages that they had for hundreds of years. That's become a very popular place for people to hike. And so we're looking at doing something there.
Oh wow, so cool. Okay, Pris, do you have a small talk question that you want to?
Yeah, sorry, mine was not a small talk anymore. It became,
This was
became a sales and
was-
marketing pitch, right? So,
Okay. The weather.
yeah.
How's the weather for you nowadays? Like,
Gee.
yeah.
Well, that's fine. Thank you, ma'am.
It's fine. Was that very bad? I think that was very
Yeah,
bad.
it was.
Yeah, it was quite bad.
How's the weather for you now?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
It's like, well, I mean, if I were you, if I'm going to small talk on the weather, it would
How's the
be,
weather?
how wet did you get
How
in
wet
the
did
last
you get?
Oh,
week?
yeah.
Gosh,
Wow.
it was horrible.
Actually, it was
Yeah.
quite horrible for the past few days.
Yeah, the point is, how wet did you get?
Oh, how wet did I get?
Yeah, you could have weather, but you guys sit here the whole day.
We played floorball yesterday,
We
yes.
played floorball, which is like a hockey-ish sport.
You got wet?
Very wet,
So
moist.
Moist,
Yeah,
yeah,
you see.
moist.
See,
Moist.
Moist, yeah.
That's small talk, you see.
Oh, yes.
And
Okay.
you didn't get wet because you were here all the
No,
time.
I was
doing some
working. I
podcasts
was
and so on.
working.
Working.
Yeah,
Working late.
yeah, working hard.
Because you're a singer?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, how important is small talk for someone like you? As like, do you engage in it a lot? I mean, as a businessman,
I can
and stuff?
tell you the biggest. This is actually a little story because all of you are too young to have known Lee Kuan Yew. But
I mean, you know he existed.
We-
yeah, you know
yeah.
he existed. And that's about it. And in the history books, that makes me feel old too. But I'm of the generation that actually sort of pioneer generation, right?
Yeah.
So I've known him quite a bit off and on and so on. And he is actually all of them. He, Dr. Goh Keng Swee, and all the pioneer people never had small talk.
Oh,
And it's kind of scary to sit with somebody at a dinner table and you sort of try to engage them in small talk and they kind of look right ahead. But when you want to talk about something substantive, then they really get into it.
yeah.
Wow.
So
Okay.
they
So-
get straight to the point. That kind
They get straight to the point because, I remember for Dr. Goh Keng Swee, I was doing my
yeah.
OCS, Officer Cadet sort of passing out ceremony, and he was there sitting next to me, and he was very quiet, looking at his watch all the time.
Couldn't wait to get out of there.
No, I was intrigued. So I was wondering, trying to make small talk. So Dr. Goh, who's the defense minister, what are you doing? Looking at your watch, are you quite busy? And he said, no, I'm timing how long it takes for every recruit to go and get up there, because if we could shorten it by 5 seconds, we could save, 30 minutes.
Yeah, okay.
So no small talk.
Yeah,
It's all
serious guy.
Serious guy.
Very serious guy.
Down to business.
You met, did you meet Lee Kuan Yew as well?
Oh yes, quite a lot. A lot of people in my generation would have met him.
Okay. And I mean, I read in the book about you that you went to jail while you were detained under the ISA.
Right.
Did you ever ask him like, hey, what's up? What was up with that?
No. I have always wanted to ask him. I've been quite open that I think he made a mistake
Yeah.
doing it, and I've also said I don't bear him a personal grudge, because I think it was a mistake. I was absolutely not a threat to Singapore. I wasn't a communist, but obviously he felt that I was somehow a threat at that time, and the times in those times were quite turbulent.
Yeah.
So it was for Singapore's sake that he did it, and I think it's a mistake. But as a CEO myself of a small company, and he's the CEO of the country, I think we all recognize people, well, compared to Singapore, but we all make mistakes. I've always wanted to ask him, Mr. Lee, why did you do what he did?
Yeah.
But I never summoned the courage. And I think that what he would have said would have been a sort of gruff, kind of like, well, I had to do what I had to do. And I think that's probably quite characteristic of the man.
Yeah.
But I think in the end, the fact that he, not to say rehabilitated me, the fact that he asked me to take over quite a number of positions, joining GIC, being the first chairman of Singapore Power, doing SMU and so on. I think there's an unspoken understanding that whatever it was that I did that the government thought was wrong, they didn't ever say it was a mistake.
Yeah.
And I don't think they ever will. But I think there's an acknowledgement that we come to terms with who we are, and that they were trying to do what they thought was best for Singapore. And I'm trying to do now what I think is the best for Singapore. And there's no need to try to uncover these old things and to ask for an apology, which I'm quite sure I would not get anyway. So why bother?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We're going to get to the questions. Are you ready for them?
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Is that enough small talk now or not?
Yeah.
I think
That was sufficient.
Okay, but before we get to the questions that you guys have submitted, if you are watching this right now, if you have a question that you need advice for, any situation at all, big or small, you can write to us at the link that is on your screen right now, or you can find that exact same link in the show description. Write to us there. Who knows, you might get someone like a hardened criminal, Kwon Ping, to answer the question for you.
Or it could be agony uncle that you've got boyfriend-girlfriend problems. Right?
Oh, we'll get into that.
We've got one. Don't worry.
We got a few.
I've got one unmarried son still,
Okay.
Oh, very good advice.
Okay, we can offer advice for your unmarried son as well.
Okay. I don't think he needs it. He's fine.
Okay, so the first question is from Grace, and this is a long one. But Grace writes, I've built a highly productive indoor farm in Singapore, growing the most amazing quality vegetables that are nutritious, pesticide-free, and delicious. It's probably the best greens you can get in Singapore. Seriously. I built this farm to grow clean food for Singapore after realizing that most produce are grown unethically using lots of pesticide. Unfortunately, I can't sell them due to many supply chain reasons. I started a subscription program to sell directly to consumers now, but even then, the take-up rate is very low, even though we are price competitive. I'm feeling really dejected. If the farm doesn't bring in more revenue, I will have to shut it. Please tell me how I should promote my vegetables to Singapore. Grace wants to know, what should she do with her so far failing farm business?
I don't quite understand that, because we also understand it meaning she said that she's price competitive.
Yeah.
And I would probably urge her to really examine what she means by being price competitive. I can well imagine for food security reasons, Singapore government has promoted people having indoor farms and so on, but largely for food security purposes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's necessary for quality purposes, because you can get very good organic farms in Thailand and in Malaysia and so on. I've had a bit of experience in the sense that we have a very large piece of land we didn't know what to do with in Chiang Mai. We actually had a farm, and we tried to supply a lot of high quality, previously only importable vegetables and fruits into Thailand. So we thought we were doing import substitution, we would be competitive, quality was good. It also didn't work, because at the end of the day, after the supply chain costs were figured in and economies of scale were figured in, we actually weren't price competitive. Okay. So my question would be to your questioner, are you really that price competitive? If you are price competitive and you claim to be quality competitive, then what could possibly be the reason that you're not doing well? There obviously cannot be some kind of reverse discrimination from the consumer that because you are grown in Singapore, the vegetable must be worse. So something doesn't make sense here. Is it a distribution problem? Is it that you don't have enough supply so that none of the supermarkets will in fact want to sell your product because it's just too little? So it might be that problem. But I think the answer is that something's wrong with the question, meaning he or he has to look deeper into it and say, if I am really of high quality and I'm price competitive, I'm not doing well, there must be another reason. It cannot be people are don't want to buy my product because they don't like my product and so on. There must be some reason.
Did you ever face this kind of problem, when you were starting the Banyan Group, any of the hotels or anything like that?
Yeah, I think I have, because I think there's a general tendency that when things are not working, one is not sufficiently and brutally honest with oneself.
Okay.
And you tend to, and I'm not claiming this person is, but I'm basically saying it of myself so that perhaps your reader can maybe see a comparison in themselves, so not to be defensive. But I think very often when things aren't working out right, we tend to want to find an external reason. But when your listeners put it that way, my tendency from my experience is that there's something wrong with the whole way she or he's analyzing this whole issue. There must be something wrong with your business model. Otherwise, you should be succeeding. There's no reason you should not succeed.
Did you guys ever did you learn about like SWOT analysis?
SWOT analysis.
Oh, yeah, you know what SWOT analysis is? That's
Strength, weakness.
Of course.
Yeah.
We do it as sort of it's sort of a natural thing that we do all the time. Like, have you been in the Singapore Army? Okay. Well, then it's just like in the Singapore Army you do appreciation of situation, you analyze terrain, you do that as kind of like a standard thing. Although it used to be a template you have to read and try to do when you're in officer cadet school, but after that it's inbuilt in you. So at the same way, a SWOT analysis and appreciation of situation, relative combat strength and so on, after a while it becomes inculcated in you, and we do SWOT analysis all the time without even needing to sort of write it on a blackboard.
Okay, so it's just something that you like.
It's a mental framework that you should have, and I think everybody should have that.
Okay, wow. So it's a real thing, not just confined to business textbooks.
No, it's a real thing. Yeah. And you should do a SWOT analysis if you have a girlfriend or boyfriend perspective in life, right?
Okay. Don't worry, we'll get to that. I feel like you're raring to go on the relationship.
No, I'm not. It's just that there was a question that you had sent me, something about that. So it's not.
Yes.
It's not the kind of stuff I normally talk about. No, not at all.
I wanted to ask you a bit about why you decided to start Banyan Tree in the first place. How did you get the idea for it, and were you ever scared that it wasn't going to work out?
I was never scared it wasn't going to work out, simply because I never thought it was actually going to work out.
Okay.
Because that's interesting, right?
Yeah.
How we started on this was more than 30 years ago, probably about 35 years ago, after I had failed in one business venture dismally, so bad that I wanted to resign from the company, family business.
Yeah, this is the oil rig.
The oil rig business. And my dad said, go and resign after you make back the money. So there was sort of, like licking my wounds, not knowing what to do. And then At that time, 35 years ago, they were just the beginning of a flight from Bangkok to this little place called Phuket. So I wanted to get away from it all. So I went with my younger brother, who's an architect, my wife, myself, and a cousin. We went to Phuket just for fun. And again, for fun, we found a piece of land and happened to buy it. And as I've said before, I never went to business school, never heard of due diligence. We just bought it, didn't know how big it was, knew nothing. Just bought it for luck. And
you're not allowed to say how much it costs. Is that
no,
correct?
I'm not allowed to say how much it cost because it would be, it was pretty cheap.
Okay.
By now, I think I've almost forgotten because for so long I've said I'm not allowed to say. It's kind of like single government reserves.
Who would get in trouble if you said how much it costs?
I don't think anybody will get into trouble. It's because actually, I'm afraid that if I were to disclose it, I'm not sure of the number anymore.
Okay.
It was quite cheap.
Okay.
I mean, it was really quite cheap, and the reason it was cheap was actually because afterwards we found out, and this is not only because it was 35 years ago, but because there was a United Nations Development Program (UNDP) report on Phuket, on the development of Phuket, way back in the 80s, right, when the UN was trying to help the Thai government develop Phuket. So they actually analyzed every single bay in Phuket in a deep, thick report. Being a journalist, I knew how to do research. Not to do due diligence, but research, because I bought the land already. And then we read up about this Bang Tao Bay, which is the longest and biggest bay in Phuket, and found out they had written it off completely because it was totally polluted. Because I had never read that report.
And you read this report after you bought the... Okay.
Other people read the report before, which said that Patong Beach, which I'm sure many of you have been to, has got the greatest potential because it's a deep bay. So everybody bought land there. So that's why it was ridiculously cheap, because it was completely written off and nobody really wanted to buy it at all. And there was a large piece that was basically a tin mine. So cut a long story short, after having bought it, we had to do something with it. So my brother, being an architect, and I sat down and literally at the kitchen table, we designed the first hotel. We got somebody to manage it, and then we built the second hotel, third hotel, and so on. And it was quite successful. By the fourth hotel or so, we had our last piece of land, which now we've expanded, of course, to be much bigger than it was before. At that time, it was our last piece of land, and it had no beach. It had a road between it and the beach. And so none of the companies we wanted to bring in to manage it wanted to manage it. And so there was that eureka moment when I said, why don't we manage it ourselves? Now, that's not a total accident. And I've always said that in life, success always has to be a mix between intent and luck. Okay. Luck meaning the happenstance of basically having a piece of land that I said, let's go and do something with it because nobody would. But also intent, because for the last 10 years before that, when I was running the rest of our family business, I had been gradually selling every one of them, because these were basically the type of businesses where we never owned the customer. We were doing what in economics is called contract manufacturing. We were basically assembling things for other people. Or like we were doing assembling of canvas shoes for Nike, Adidas. We were assembling televisions and so on for other brands. Or we were doing trading. Right, which is also trading other people's things. But we never owned a customer. And you're always running just to stand still. And anytime any cheaper country comes along, the companies will move there and remove and basically relocate their sourcing from there. So I decided at that time that I needed to find a brand. I needed to do something. But not being of any particular industry background, I had the intent of saying to myself, next thing we're going to do in life, I'm never going to do contract manufacturing or trading. I have to own the customer. I have to have a brand. So that's the intent. And then the luck was this piece of land. You put two and two together and we said, well, let's try and do a hotel brand. And that's what we did. We launched Banyan Tree. We did things that we were not knowing was luxury. We did a small hotel with only 25 keys because that was the only risk we were willing to take. We put in a private swimming pool because they were not that expensive, but because then we thought people can use a private swimming pool rather than go to the sea. We did a spa because it was just the beginning of the idea of what a spa was all about. and a whole lot of other stories about the whole spa, the tropical garden spa that I've written about, that Aaron has written about in the book. So that's how it all started. And I think the moral of that story is, I think luck and intent have to come together for a venture to take off. Anybody who tells you that they did it entirely from intent, that all along they knew that what they were going to do, isn't really telling you the truth.
Yeah.
And at the same time, if it's just luck you're going for, without any longer term intent, you're not going to have a lasting, successful enterprise either.
Yeah, interesting. I want to ask you a bit more about, your business, the genesis of your business and some of those early days. But before we go into that, I mean, since you mentioned the spa thing, have you seen White Lotus, the HBO TV show?
I didn't get past the first few episodes.
No.
Why is that?
It's so good.
I absolutely love it.
Really? Does it get better later on? Sometimes the first, it gets, I'm told it gets darker.
First
Yes.
season, is that the one that the first few episodes of the first? It's in Hawaii.
Yeah, and it was kind of,
Italy, and then the
It
next
was
one
very.
is in
I didn't
Thailand.
see Italy. I saw it was very light-hearted and a little bit kind of.
Oh, it's
it
not
gets darker. Is it?
It gets
Okay,
dark.
then I should go deeper.
You
into
like
it.
you like dark shows?
and like the one. Which one, what was the other one? Was it called Ozark?
Ozark. Yeah, that's pretty dark.
Yeah, but it starts out as a very Breaking Bad. Is that called?
Oh,
Yeah.
These movies these are introduced to me by my kids, by the way. They start out as kind of very mundane type movies, very ordinary, kind of boring, and then it drags you in darker and darker. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So does White Lotus get darker?
I like shows that like analyze each individual's character. So
Okay.
The
it's
psyche,
it's more
yeah.
than the plot. I think it's like about each character and how they slowly develop and they slowly expose how
Crazy they are.
crazy
Yeah.
and
Oh, okay. Then I will go back and watch it.
Give it a second go.
But it's, it's
okay.
not like in your face.
Okay.
Like you can feel it. Yeah,
Okay, that's good.
why
You
I
need
like
to.
it. Yeah.
I think you need to. People have told me about how good White Lotus is. It's just that in the beginning, Hawaii part just kind of sounds like a sort of love boat kind of thing.
It's not. It's not.
Oh,
Okay.
it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, get it.
But at the same time, have you guys watched The Bear?
Oh my gosh, it's my current obsession. The
Yeah,
Bear's
because
my
I'm in
current
hospitality, so I'm
Yes,
very.
okay.
You see the restaurants and how they work and so on.
Yeah.
Actually, that's very good too because
That's
it talks
very-
about people and challenges and yeah. Okay, I'll watch White Lotus. But the
Yeah.
last one is
I've never watched.
oh
The Bear?
Yeah, the bear or
Or
the
White
lotus.
Lotus.
Yeah, or White Lotus.
Might be too
I
young.
should.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll start.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a show to watch anyway. So
you're too seriously reading books.
books. The last time I read a book was in secondary school.
Wow. Okay, wait. Okay, back to the question.
Yeah.
And if you can excuse me asking a slightly rude question, maybe if you don't mind. Because you started your business, you were working with your dad's business before that, and you talked about having a failure. Do you think that? And correct me if you think I'm wrong here, but coming from a slightly privileged background,
Surely.
that you could afford to take a risk like starting a business, and that's not that's harder for other people to do
Absolutely.
when it comes to that intent and luck that you mentioned earlier.
Oh, absolutely. I'm pretty straightforward about my own circumstances of being upper middle class person, having a family business where we could afford to lose a lot of money and I could still succeed. But my circumstances, which I talk about, it's not necessarily applicable for everybody else.
Yeah.
I have in fact spoken at length about how I don't think one should romanticize the whole issue of entrepreneurship, and I think a lot of young people think that it's such a romantic thing to do, that you come fresh out of university, everybody's got to go into their own startup or else you're not legit. You got to really do it out, when you're super young. The whole Steve Jobs kind of idea of doing something in tech in your garage and then becoming successful and being a college dropout. I would actually recommend people not to do that. The most successful entrepreneurs are people who de-risk themselves. And if you just look at the Singapore context, because we're such a big electronic center, some of the most successful companies that have ventured out. In fact, Venture Corp is one of them. I'm not sure if you know that company, and a few others too, who the founders are friends of mine. They were working in the multinational companies, and usually when they get to be maybe early 40s, when they've learned a lot already, and they also don't go out on their own. They usually would go out into business as 3 or 4 partners who are perhaps strong in different areas, and then they understand the landscape of what they want to go out into. And they also de-risk by very often being a subcontractor to the big multinational company. So my point is that yes, I'm very open about the fact that I came from a privileged background, and therefore what I did is not a model for everybody else. And if I wanted to propose a model for entrepreneurship, I would say don't romanticize it. It's already so difficult. Don't romanticize the idea of risk-taking for an entrepreneur. The real successful entrepreneurs are those people who, from the starting day, know how risky it is, so they go to great lengths to try to de-risk themselves. And that's by de-risking the number of measures I mentioned. Go out a little bit later when you already have business expertise. Go out with partners. Go out with potential market and customers, and so on.
And so what would you have done if that first Banyan Tree hotel failed?
If it had failed, as the rig deal failed, you alluded to it, I'm not going to be explaining here about the oil rig deal that we did, but I had actually thought it was going to succeed.
The oil rig?
Yeah, because obviously nobody is crazy enough or irresponsible enough to say, I'm just going to do this for a lark. I was quite seriously knowing how much money we were putting into it, and I really quite seriously thought it was going to succeed. Far more than Banyan Tree.
Yeah.
Because Laguna Phuket was succeeding as 4 or 5 hotels, but Banyan Tree was just one little venture where we ventured into hospitality, investing, and management with only 25, 30 rooms. And I never thought it was going to become a bigger thing. So if it had failed, we'd have just let it fail, and we'll probably go back to hotel investing, which we were quite good at, and we had good land in terms of Phuket. But I guess for my case, and this is not at all necessarily applicable for other people, the point was that at some point I began to realize that yes, Banyan Tree as a brand and as a company does have legs, does have traction with its market, strikes a chord with people, and perhaps it is something I could really consider to be my long-term objective of building a brand, and maybe this would be it. But I never knew or decided in advance that hospitality would be the brand I would build, because I did not come from a hospitality background at all.
Yeah. And do you think there are certain temperaments that are better suited to entrepreneurship or to managing a big business like yourself?
Those are 2 separate questions. Is there a certain mentality that's required for managing a big business? Is quite separate from attributes for being an entrepreneur.
Okay.
Because my business is hardly a big business. I've got friends of mine. I've been director on international boards where the management has to manage businesses multiple times bigger than a Banyan Tree.
Yeah.
So I guess I would say the attributes needed for managing a very big business would be the standard type of things you would talk about in business school, right? You need organizational acumen, you need analytical skills, you need all those sort of stuff. Those are not so much emotional skills, those are basically managerial skills. What I have found about most entrepreneurs, small or big, is that generally they're entrepreneurs because they don't function that well in big companies.
Okay.
In terms of the personality trait. Okay.
I see.
Now and I think that's a relatively interesting angle of looking at it, because that's how I've seen myself.
Yeah.
I don't romanticize the entrepreneur in necessarily a positive way, that the entrepreneur is an entrepreneur because he or she has been so driven that they want to do all these great things in life, and they don't want to be an employee because they want to be their own boss, and all that kind of romantic stuff the glorified stuff you talk about.
Yeah.
I think half the time people, of course there are those types too, right, who've always wanted to have a vision and build something massive.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there's a lot of people who are entrepreneurs because they don't work very well in big companies. And I'm one of them.
What do you mean you don't work well in big companies?
I'm a bit individualistic.
Okay.
I kind of like to do my own thing. And I guess that's the issue. I mean, there's no right or wrong. It's not a value judgment.
Yeah.
I just
Bit
like...
of a rebel.
No, it's not a rebel. No, a rebel is somebody who rebels against something else.
Okay.
I'm not I was a rebel and I'm in some ways a rebel. But what I'm talking about being an entrepreneur is that very often you want to go into business. And I'm even talking about some of the guys who do super small businesses. It's because you just like to be your own boss.
Yeah.
You just like to get up in the morning and do your own thing. You like to be in control of your own fate. And that might mean that you are not ever going to be the CEO of a $100 billion company. Now, it takes certain other skills. It takes a lot of social skills to be able to navigate a world where you have to work with bosses, you have to work with colleagues, you have to navigate politics without getting dispirited or depressed by politics.
Yeah.
And some people are just not cut out for the corporate life.
Yeah.
And I think you have to know yourself enough. So it's not at all an issue of one is better than the other. I have friends of mine who are entrepreneurs, I have friends of mine who are CEOs of multi-billion dollar companies and probably making money a lot more as a CEO of a multinational company than the guy who is an entrepreneur running a little bakery. So there's no value judgment as to which is better.
Right.
It's just that there are certain, I think, personality attributes that make you probably more inclined to be able to succeed as a manager in a big company.
Yeah.
And certain personality attributes that might make you more suited to be a happy entrepreneur. Could be a big entrepreneur of $1 billion company or even an entrepreneur of a small company. So I think there are certain personality traits. And I only mention this because I think it's important for every person to, again, not romanticize entrepreneurship or to romanticize becoming a CEO of a big company. I think it's good to know yourself. Know yourself and what kind of a person you are. If you work well in a big company and you don't generally think you want to go out and take the little risk of running your own bakery and, whatever, that kind of stuff, then go for it and try to be the CEO of a big company. But if you notice that somehow you're not, that's not your thing, it's not your gig to try to do that, and you want to go out and do your own thing, then by all means do your own thing. And I just happen to belong to probably the category of people who like to do their own thing.
And writing on that, what advice would you give for people who are not comfortable in working for a big company or like working under someone, but don't have that courage to take the step to actually go out and do their own business? Like they're too comfortable in where they're at, but they know that they don't want to be there. And but they just don't have the courage to start their own business.
My own sense is that that's rather a sad situation. Honestly.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have talked quite a bit about the term. I've talked about sleepwalking through life. I've mentioned that a few times. That I think the saddest thing that can happen to a young person is, number one, before you know it, you're not going to be young anymore. Okay? Seriously.
Yep.
You mean, I'm much older than you are, but I can remember when I was your age, and suddenly you will look back and think and say, now I'm 70. I used to be 20. And I know myself. I remember and know myself so well at 20. It's not as if that's a distant person, right? It's myself. And yet time has just passed. And I think you don't want to look back and say, I sleepwalked and I kind of wasted those years. So my sense is that if you are a person who is at that crossroad, you have to really, really ask yourself a very difficult question. And that's where knowing yourself is so critical. If you know that the risk isn't worth taking and you don't have that risk appetite, which is fine, then clear it out of your mind and say, I will really go for it and I will be happy in what I'm doing. It doesn't mean you have to aspire to be the CEO of the company, but I will be happy and I will make myself happy. So that when I retire at age whatever, in a big company, whatever position that is, I'm going to be very happy with it and I will have no regrets. I think regrets is one of the worst things to have. If on the other hand, you in your heart of hearts, you know that you're not likely to function well in a big company. Not that it's right, not that it's wrong, but your temperament, then think seriously about what you want to do in the next 5 or more years so that you plan towards having your own business. I have met quite a number of friends who have wanted to leave a big business and start up their own thing. My advice to them has always been, take your time, de-risk, de-risk, de-risk. Do not over-romanticize entrepreneurship. It is hard.
Yep.
But all those of my friends who have done it, 5 years later, they tell me how happy they are. They're not all billionaires. Some have become billionaires. Many have not. But those that have been successful, moderately successful, tell me how happy they are because it was in their temperament all along to do their own thing.
Right.
Some have failed, but then they don't feel bad. They feel, I mean, if they've gone bankrupt, of course they feel bad.
Yeah.
But some have failed and realized that being an entrepreneur isn't really for me. At least now I know what I want to be. I'll go back and join a big business. I may have lost a few years, but I can catch up and I would do well. And I may not be a CEO, but I'll be happy because I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I tried and I really wasn't that good. So I'll go back to where I am. So the long and short of it is that I think the worst thing to be in is wanting to do something, not daring to do it,
Yep.
and not making a decision that you're going to do the other thing, but always lamenting that I should be doing this, I should be doing it, but I don't dare to. And one day when you're too old and you retire, you'll always ask yourself, I could have been an entrepreneur. You look at your friend down the road who became a very successful entrepreneur and you will regret, you will hate yourself for it, and that's not the state you want to be in.
I think we're kind of moving towards
Yeah.
the topic for the second question. So why don't you go ahead and
Yeah.
and pose it for KP?
We good with time?
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I want to just share also. Like, I always have friends. Like, everyone around me they either want to start their own business, start a cafe. They just, I want to work on my own. I want to do my own thing. And I always felt very weird about it because I never had like a passion to start my own thing.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, what you said just made complete sense. I guess I gotta be CEO now. But yeah, it's either this or that, right? But yeah, I think I always felt like I was very weird to not want to pursue that path. Like, oh, I need to go out of my way, take risks, build like something up for myself. And I felt a bit like, damn, am I just not ambitious, or I'm just not like taking risks in life? Well, all my, like, I think I'm one of maybe a group of 5. I'm just the only one who doesn't take or doesn't even think in that way.
Yeah.
I think what we all need to have is not ambition even. It's a sense of purpose.
Right.
If you don't find that sense of purpose being an employee in a company, go out and do your own thing. But of course, the other thing I'd caution is that if you're going to go out and do your own thing, again, don't choose the easy thing and just start another cafe and because you'll die. You will die.
No.
If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you better think about what USP, what what unique special features you have. What's your special proposition? And if you do start a cafe, what is your USP in
Right.
the cafe?
Yeah.
But I think more important to that is to find purpose. If you are working in a company, you don't even need to aspire to be a CEO. If you really love the culture of the company, you love what you're doing, you love the friends, and it's giving you the work-life balance that you really want to have, and you're happy, you don't need to be setting for yourself the aspiration of being the CEO.
Now I feel like I need to take that extra step to try.
I think you need a sense of purpose, and a sense of purpose means challenging yourself, whatever it might be.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
everybody's different. You may want to say, I don't need to be the CEO, but I want to be financially well enough so that I can pursue another interest I have in life.
Right.
I want to be a musician. I've wanted to do this. I wanted to do that. I wanted to set up a charity mission in Uganda. Whatever it is, everybody is not identical.
Right.
But my only point is that too many young people do not have an idea of what they want to be when they reach 60. And I think what people need to do is sort of project yourself now and say, where do I see visualize yourself, right? Self-visualization. What could I imagine myself being at 60? Or could I imagine myself as CEO of the company and super powerful? Or I could imagine myself very happily in a company, but I have so many other interests outside in music and art and this. I want to be actually a substantial player in this area, or I want to do something else there. I think it's important for young people to start thinking, what do I want to be when I'm 60? And then you plan, I wouldn't call it a career, you plan your life goal and you plan a journey.
Right.
Your journey towards that goal, which is completely different for every individual. But the sad thing is, what I call sleepwalking, is when you don't know what you want to do. You live every day, kind of get up in the morning, you see your friends, you go to work, you're a bit blasé about things, you're kind of generally not very happy. You have a sense of malaise, and emptiness. And you don't know, and you go to a shopping center, the typical Singapore thing, you go to Orchard Road, you go to a mall, you walk around, you window shop, you go and eat with friends, and just kind of keeps on going every day. And before you know it, 3 years have passed, 6 years have passed.
True.
And then where are you? That's the concern I have about young Singaporeans. And it is part of a concern of being an affluent country. You don't have this when you talk to younger Indonesians or Thais, because they're still struggling for just to reach
Right.
where you all are at now.
Yeah.
So they have a greater sense of purpose. We are now a rich country. So what do you want beyond material gain? It's very little we want in material things anymore.
Yeah. I think we can move, because this actually our second question is
Sorry.
quite related to
Okay.
what you're saying. So this person called Struggle Town said that he is struggling with finding a sense of purpose in life. And she can't really find, fulfillment in my work. And outside of that, life feels pretty aimless. I'm scared of the idea of wasting my time, and I don't want to get to the end and feel like I should have done more. I know it's kind of morbid and not good for a light podcast conversation, but I can't stop thinking about it. So, KP, what is, how do you find fulfillment in what you do?
Well, I guess for myself it's clear, but it's again easier for myself. Let me tell you about what I see my challenge with all my associates. And my big challenges in the hospitality industry, it sounds glamorous from the outside, but from the inside it's pretty tough. It's low compensation, very difficult hours, burnt weekends,
Right.
and
I've seen the bear. I know how it is.
yeah, well, it's not much better. And you see the Michelin star, and you see how dressed up they are, but it is very difficult. So my challenge has been always one of what can I do to make my colleagues who are particularly at the front line wake up each morning wanting to go to work. Now, I'm posing this question down the different way now. It's not what I'm going to do. The question now is for the person from Struggle Town, is it?
Struggle Town.
Basically ask him or her, when you wake up in the morning, how do you feel? Do you feel excited about going to work? Really think about it. Do you really want to get up and go to work? Excited doesn't mean necessarily that it's positive. You may be excited because there's so many problems, but you're excited to tackle those problems. Or do you feel pretty blah? If you start feeling pretty blah, then start analyzing seriously. Is it because of your boss? Is it because of your colleagues? And if those are not at all good for you and things don't look like they're going to change, and that seems to be one of the major reasons why you're feeling blah, then you got to change that situation. You got to look for another job. If it's not that, but you are feeling blah because you're stuck in a relationship which is not going anywhere, but you don't have the guts to end it, and that might be the reason that you're feeling this blahness, this feeling, this sense of not going anywhere. My life isn't going anywhere. So you need to, there's no one answer, but I think the point is you do have to sit down and be brutally honest with yourself and ask, what is it that's making my life, not to use a big word, purposeful, but what's making my life so that when I wake up in the morning, I feel blah. That to me is a very tangible way of measuring purposefulness, right?
Yeah.
Right.
If you feel blah, Is it because my relationship isn't going anywhere? Is it because my work isn't going anywhere? And then you have got to change it. Otherwise, again, before you know it, you will have lived a blah life. When people are in a difficult situation about their own lives, like Struggle Town, you need to reach into the deepest reaches of your own soul and ask yourself and be brutally honest, what should I be doing? And I think the answer is there for most people if they are able to be detached and looking at themselves and saying, what is my life all about? And what do I need to do to get back in touch with my real self and live the life that I should be living and the life that I want to live? There's no external answer for that. I just think it is a issue that afflicts a lot of people. And the only answer is you have to be brutally honest with yourself. And the answer is there. That's the thing I keep on emphasizing. The answer is always there already. You just need to find what that answer is for yourself.
Right. You can't be delulu.
Yeah.
Do you know what
Yeah,
that? Are you familiar with the term delulu?
No, is it deluded or delulu?
I mean, it's
Delusional.
like
Being very deluded, self-deluding, right?
yeah. So if you ever have to use the word, the new like
Oh,
slang
okay.
is delulu.
Oh, delulu. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not.
Like,
It's not.
like
It's not a
upward
Singaporean.
inflection.
It's not a Singaporean slang, is it? It's a
No,
global.
No,
it's
it's
like
like a-
global.
Oh, delulu.
You
Okay.
can use it at
Right.
all 22 countries that you have hotels in.
Okay, all right. I'm going to use it. I have a dinner with my two kids,
Oh,
two
yeah.
of my kids today.
Oh, try it.
I'm going to say, my God, you're that's a pretty delulu remark.
Yes, you used it perfectly.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yes.
all right. Okay, cool.
Sorry, and going back a little bit to finding fulfillment. You were saying how when you wake up and feel blah, like how do you feel when you wake up, get ready for work?
Right now, I guess the happy situation I'm in right now is that I feel there isn't time enough in the day to do the things I want to do. I think that's quite a nice feeling.
Yeah.
I don't consider. I think I've navigated the company and myself quite well to the extent that, and I do talk to other family businesses about it. That usually, very often, the patriarch of a family business doesn't want to let go. He thinks he's so important. He micromanages everything and so on, and that really damages the relationship with the next generation. I think to that extent, I honestly think I've been quite successful. I have passed on a lot of the things, but it's not as if I have too much time on my hands because I've chosen certain things to be very, very hands-on about. But those are the things that I know I can do well, and also it's not that time intensive. So I've measured it so that I think I wake up every morning very excited about the things I want to do in business. I'm very excited. Our family is a very close family, although we travel all over the place. I've got 5 grandkids I spend time with. So I actually think I'm in a very happy place right now. And I'm grateful every day for the place that I am in. And I don't take it for granted. I think that's an important point to make about anyone who's happy with the state that he or she is, that you cannot take it for granted and you must always be grateful for it. Otherwise, terrible things can happen. Hubris can happen, and other things too.
Right.
I wanted to ask a bit about your, coming back to Singapore to serve NS, right? Because you had a reputation as a student radical, or like you were protesting war. Did your friends, or did you find it ironic that you were coming back to Singapore to join the army, having had like kind of pacifist leanings when you're in the States?
No, I wasn't a pacifist at all in the States. In fact, most of us who left university, either voluntary or otherwise, some of them, my friends who were Americans, joined the U.S. Army because the talk at that time was you got to get into the belly of the beast and slay the beast from within. Okay. And that's the kind of radical talk they had in those days.
Yeah.
So I actually came into the army, and I remember very well my first few months as a recruit. I was trying to radicalize my colleagues.
That might have been why they
that didn't go down very well. But my NS experience were one of some of the best years I had. In fact, I even wanted to sign on. Can you imagine?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And my parents had to tell me, no, don't sign on. Because it's not that I like the military as such.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the camaraderie that was there. I felt a strong sense of camaraderie in doing things with people for a common cause. And that's actually quite strong. I mean, we in the army, we weren't there to defend Singapore, though we say we were. We were there because whether it's as a platoon or as a battalion or as a company, we were there going on exercises because of each other, right? I mean, it's known even within all militaries of the world that soldiers do not fight for God, they don't fight for country, they fight for the guy next to them. So camaraderie is critical. And I really learnt the importance of camaraderie in the military. And it's something I try to build within my own company today, that camaraderie, which I guess in a corporate world would be known as corporate culture, is so critical to binding a company together.
Yeah, so you make them march around the Banyan Tree Resort and sing,
Yes.
and sing the songs.
Yes.
No
Yes.
doors, no walls.
No. They do. Anybody who doesn't do right, they have to do push-ups. Okay.
Buddha claps. in
And
Bali.
then
Yeah, I find it interesting. I mean, like, how did you make that decision? Because I feel like so many people in your shoes would not have made the decision to come back to Singapore to serve NS.
I think if I were to again go back to that question about, because there's no point to try to extrapolate from my own situation
Yeah.
when the situation doesn't apply at all now.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
going to come back to NS.
Yeah.
But I need to extrapolate it because I think it deals with the question you asked about people who are suffering a sort of midlife crisis, whether they're midlife or even pre-midlife.
Quarter-life crisis.
Quarter-life crisis. Where do I want to go from here? And as you had mentioned earlier, I don't think I'm very happy in my job and I really want to go out and do something, but the risks
the
are too
courage,
high, the courage and the risk. In my case, I didn't go into business because it was risky and so on. I think the riskiest thing I did for a personal level was making the decision to come back to Singapore, right? Okay. From a personal life point of view. If I didn't come back to Singapore, life would have been easy, pretty easy. But coming back to Singapore was a risk, not of imprisonment, not of this or that, but the risk that I was throwing away everything I knew about life and coming back to something that I could actually be highly unhappy in. I would have been stuck with 2 years or 2.5 years in those days of utter unhappiness. And then beyond that, maybe in a country which I never knew as my own, except by passport and so on. But there's a part in you, and that's why I'm saying I don't want to tell about why I decided one or the other. I can't even remember, but I just remember really well. I kept on walking around that lake all alone because school had already ended. And finally, I came to a conclusion that I felt at peace at. Now, how do you define that? I don't know. But I took a difficult decision that was risky, but I somehow felt at peace with that decision. And then I came back. And it could have worked out wrongly, but then I guess I could always go back to the US.
Yeah.
But it turned out well. So by that same token, I think sometimes we all have risks to take in life. They're not like they're life-changing risks. They're not fatal risks. They're not financial risks, except for some if you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But sometimes you do have to take a risk and say, look, everything tells me I should do this. And then I make that decision. And once you make that decision, you live with it for a few days. And it's really true what the science books have said about sleeping. Yeah. Sleeping with a problem for a while. Because your brain digests it, even when you're sleeping. And then with every day, either that decision you've made feels more and more uncomfortable, or it feels more and more right. But I think confronting that is important, rather than just letting it slip by.
Would you say that was the first big decision or the first step in the path that has led you to become as successful as you are today?
I think so, because I was 20 years old at that time. Before that, my life was following the path of least resistance. I went into student activism because in Thailand, in the high school, and this is in the 60s when there was a big, outpouring of student activism all over the world in the 60s because the baby boomer generation was coming of age. I had become president of the student council. We introduced things. So I was being propelled along a comfortable wave, which culminated in my being thrown out.
Yeah.
And the throwing out of school. I could have gone on that same wave and gone on to Cornell, and I don't know what have happened after that. But that was the first decision at 20 to do something which I actually did not want to do.
Yeah.
And I was scared to do.
Yeah.
But that has taught me a lesson that sometimes now, ever since then, making difficult decisions is now less difficult. Because I try to then draw upon myself as a 20-year-old and trying to ask myself, what was it that enabled me to make that difficult decision? And now, of course, you think of it, it's really a certain detachment, a certain brutal honesty with yourself about who you are and who you are not. So that allows me to make more difficult decisions later in life. And I've said this to a lot of young people that if you want to learn how to make difficult decisions in life, which is actually the source of leadership, you can draw upon difficult decisions you've made even early in life. I went to West Point for a number of years to give lectures.
The military academy.
In the military academy in the US, because I was not happy with how leadership is being taught at business schools. So I wanted to see how do you teach it in a military school, because leadership, unlike in business, leadership in a military school can be a life or death thing if you're going to lead soldiers into death or life, right? So I actually interacted with a lot of students, and I found that when I talked to these young West Point cadets who are only 19 or 20 years old, and I asked them to think about difficult decisions that they made, you find that every one of them has made a difficult decision. One of them actually reported on his best friend because he had broken the code of honor and couldn't decide whether to report or not to report. He reported at the end, he did the right thing, he lost his best friend.
Yeah.
Some other people have made some other decisions. So my point is, when you call upon yourself, even as a young person, the decisions that you made that were difficult for you, but which were right decisions, you'll find that calling upon the person that you were when you made those right decisions can help you in the future as you confront difficult decisions. And it's all within us. And it's not as if an older person has an easier time to make difficult decisions. It's all about drawing upon your own times when you've had the courage to make your own difficult decisions. Then you can make it for yourself later on in life.
I'm so glad you said that, because just like you, I mean, I was living in Australia, that's why I speak funny. And then I had to make the decision as well whether I wanted to come back and do NS. And I did. So I think now I can look forward to being a successful entrepreneur as well.
Not CEO.
Not CEO. I don't know. Yeah, maybe. But yes, it was a tough decision, but I think it was the right one in the end. It's the right one in the end.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask a bit about your, because I heard on the Yalabat podcast, you were talking about how you want to spend the rest of your life, right? You're thinking about, the limited, we all have limited time, but you're thinking specifically about the limited time you have left and what you're going to do with it. I'm wondering if you have any regrets of how you spent your time so far in your life.
I don't think there's much point in life to have regrets. I think there's a lot to be said about self-reflection and learning things so that you do not repeat those mistakes, or so that those mistakes can help you have a better life.
Yeah.
But a pure regret, I guess I'm relatively practical. What's the point?
Okay.
You only feel bad. You feel bad, but what can you do about it? What is done is done. So my wife actually says I'm one of the most optimistic people she knows, because I never have any regrets. And that's why I think I've been able to actually have gone through a life that to me was pretty normal, but most people look at it and say, you've been jailed twice, you've been kicked out, you've been this and that. It's kind of unusual.
Yeah.
And I don't bear any deep scars or deep grudges or mental health problems because I don't have regrets. I don't like to wallow in a lot of regrets, which I think just tear you up and destroy you. But that's not to mean one should be not mindful about one's own past so that you can live a happier life.
Yeah.
So that's where I am at.
When you look back on that younger self, the one doing protests in the US, throwing rocks, what do you think when you look back on that young self? Do you disdain that person, or I don't know, do you look at it
No,
wistfully?
I think that was a pretty cool guy. No, honestly. I mean, I think part of the reason why I think it was pretty cool is also because I had parents who were really wonderful.
Okay.
A lot of parents would have, and because my father knew the pioneer generation, because he knew them well. So the initial, and being Chinese, you would have expected him to say, "You brought shame upon us," and so on. Never once did he or my mother reprimand me. And because they knew probably I was just living out what they themselves had told me about their own childhood.
Yeah.
When my father almost joined the Communist Party in China, when he was in China, my mother almost joined the army in China and pretended to be a boy to fight the Japanese and so on.
Mulan. She's Mulan.
Well, yeah, she got rejected earlier already. She just tried to join and she didn't get her very far at 15. But my point was they were very patriotic. They were very idealistic people. And so they knew that essentially I'd learned a lot of the idealism from them. I'm not at all disdainful, nor at all ashamed of my past, because I don't think I've ever done anything that I should be ashamed about. I lived my values.
Yeah.
I was too headstrong. That's absolutely sure. And if you ask me if I were to redo it over again, I would probably say I would have done the same thing, but I would have muted quite a lot of it, so I wouldn't need to get thrown into jail in Singapore. I wouldn't need to have been thrown out of Stanford. But yeah, it's a bit excessive for a young person. But I've never felt that I am ashamed of it. And I think that's important because today, whatever I am today, what my family is today in Banyan Tree today, is a continuing manifestation of the same values I had before.
Yeah.
Now I run a capitalist enterprise.
Yeah.
Hopefully we make good money, we play shareholders, I have a good life and so on. But at the end of the day, the values that we have are still incredibly important. And that's why, we are known for sustainability, but we didn't do it for sustainability. We did sustainability things even before the word was even created.
Yeah.
So I don't think I have reneged on the values that I had. I think with age and experience, you mellow a lot, and I've mellowed in being a lot less radical, but I don't think I have changed, and I do not feel any shame nor disdain about what I was in the past.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, which was, if your younger self was looking at you today, do you think that person would feel like KP sold out?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because that young person at the age of 20 told himself, if I keep on going this way, I'm playing a game. And that same person at 24 in ISD asked himself and had the same answer, I'm playing a game. So I have not sold out because, if you were to call selling out, I've sold out twice already before.
Okay.
I've sold out twice before because I decided it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So it depends on how you define it, right? You sell out because you are now a business tycoon. But along the journey, I've come to the realization of what I am and what I am not. And I am not a Nelson Mandela. I'm not a Mao Zedong. I'm not a Ho Chi Minh. I'm not a Lee Kuan Yew.
Yeah.
So I am living what I believe is the life I want to live that has got purpose. But I make no pretense at all that I am a great hero, that I have values. I make no comparison to what I think I should be. So if you don't have any gap between who you are and what you think you should be, then you are living a true life. You're living a fake life if you say, I am this, but you are not that.
Yeah. You mentioned the political leaders. I read in Kishore's book that you were once interviewed to run for the PAP. But I guess you didn't pass the interview. Is that
No,
is that-
that's not true.
Oh, okay.
It's a different circumstance. I can talk a little bit about it, but I shouldn't do too much. Kishore's never asked me about it, so he's actually gotten it a bit wrong.
Oh, okay.
I was interviewed and was told to be accepted and to be ready for a particular position. In fact, it was Jalan Kayu.
Yeah.
Supposed to understudy the MP there. I think it was Huang Sujin at that time. Then a number of things developed, which in fact resulted with the leadership asking me whether I wanted to continue with it or not, and it was my choice. And I felt that it was a relatively lukewarm endorsement when they say it's up to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my sense was, if it's up to me, that means you guys are not that keen on it. So I would rather withdraw from it.
Yeah. Okay.
And but the other circumstances behind that, I don't think it's necessary for me to
I see.
talk about.
Yeah.
The end result is that no, I pulled out.
Yeah. Okay. So Kishore got rejected, but you pulled
No,
out.
I don't know what Kishore.
Oh, he said he got rejected.
Well, that's up to him.
Yeah, I mean, my follow up to that, I guess, is do you, looking back now, or even, with the time that you have left, right, is politics something that you want to be involved in?
I think an involvement in public life and in the unfolding of a society and being able to have a role in public life is something that's always been of interest to me. But I think it doesn't have to be necessarily politics in terms of parliamentary politics.
Yeah.
It could just be a deep degree of involvement with civil society. Now, Singapore today has opened up a lot more so that a lot of people can be involved in the evolution of Singapore society without being directly involved with parliamentary politics. Singapore's civil society was far less open in the past. So there were very few avenues by which you could affect change in Singapore without being involved in politics. So to that extent, yes, I think a lot of us, my people of my generation, from Kishore to myself and other people who were asked, who were turned down, who themselves turned down, PAP, whatever, there's a number of people. I think we've all discovered that there are other ways to contribute. My parents were dead set against me going into politics simply because of my own family circumstances. They had really high hopes for me continuing the family business.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, I think it was a very good decision that I did not go into politics, because I would have to give up everything to do with the family business. And political life in Singapore does have a sort of stop dead date. I mean, it's a retirement date, whereas in family business you can continue on and on. I've encouraged my children to be very involved with public life in Singapore, to have views about things, to be involved with civil society and so on. But personally, I think for them, parliamentary politics is not something they need to be involved in.
Okay, so now we're going to do a new segment that we've been doing called One Big Question. The way this works is that our guest, in this case KP, gets to pick one of these questions. Behind these cards is a sort of philosophical-ish question, and we'll try and give like a quick fire answer to it. So he has the privilege of picking one of these cards.
The middle one.
Okay, the middle one. The middle one is, do ghosts exist? Why don't you start us off, KP? Do ghosts exist?
I really don't know, because I tend to be agnostic about most things in life, except that once or twice I think I did encounter one.
Oh, story.
Okay, wait, we'll get to that in a second. Alfie, do ghosts exist?
Yes.
Yep. Chris, do ghosts exist?
No.
No.
Oh.
I'm quite skeptical, but open to the idea of ghosts existing, but very skeptical. Okay, but you've opened the door there. Please tell us your ghost story. Is it a banyan tree related one?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I mean, I don't believe in ghosts simply because from an agnostic point of view, just like I'm also agnostic about God, about deities. Things that I have not experienced, I generally would say, I don't know, right? So I don't run down people who believe in this or that, but I haven't experienced it.
Yeah.
So I'm generally agnostic. I had one example, only one in my life, where I woke up in one of our hotels in China in the middle of the night, and I felt this really heaviness in my body, and I felt like totally paralyzed.
Okay.
and I felt something pass in front of me.
Yeah.
And it seemed like an endless time, but it passed.
Yeah.
And I knew it wasn't a dream. Somehow you know something isn't a dream. You're not dreaming it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then it passed, and then it was over. And then I just got out of bed and turned on all the lights, and I felt really, really scared. I mean, all my hairs were on end and so on.
Okay.
So that was my only experience of something which really spooked the hell out of me.
Yeah. Can I reassure people who might want to go to a banyan tree in China? That really sounds like sleep paralysis to me.
Yeah,
Are you familiar with sleep paralysis?
Generally.
Yeah.
But, okay.
Those are like the key characteristics of sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
You wake up, you feel like there's something weight on you and you can't move, and then you feel like there's a shadow or something in the room.
Now, how do you know that sleep paralysis is not just a
well,
medical
I mean,
term for people encountering ghosts?
It could be.
Right?
I read it in a book.
It's
But yeah.
like the entire plot of this movie, like Insidious.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's this horror movie.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it could well be sleep paralysis, but then I've never had it ever since. I've only had it once. So,
Yeah.
so as I said,
Interesting.
I
Were you very tired that day?
no.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, but as I said, I'm still agnostic. I
Yeah.
don't believe that just because I had that experience, I now believe in ghosts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm still agnostic. I'm not at all saying that was a ghost, but it's the closest to what I've thought was a ghost. If now I can really attribute it to sleep paralysis, I'll be quite happy. Then I would think there are no ghosts.
I mean, when you guys open Banyan Tree Resorts, right? Like you go to.
This doesn't happen in a Banyan Tree. It happened in one of our other brands.
Okay.
But I won't say which one and where.
Don't. But like, do you guys do? You know, I've heard of people who like when they open a hotel, they do like rituals to like cleanse the land or something like that. Do you ever have to do stuff like that?
Well, if some of the contractors generally do it.
Okay.
Contractors do it because they think they're earth spirits. We do that in Thailand. There are the spirit houses. So wherever we do things, we have spirit houses, etc. And that to me is just basically doing something that other people believe in. So there's no harm in doing it. But I will tell you a secret about hotels. In a lot of hotels, not necessarily ours.
Okay, go on.
In a lot of hotels, there's a white envelope, unmarked, that a general manager will pass to the next general manager.
Okay.
And it just contains a few numbers. And these are room numbers.
Oh.
And these are room numbers so that if any guest tells you that they want to move out of that room, you do not question why.
Oh my god.
Wow.
And it's only the general manager.
Well, it should be kept pretty secret so that, So if people were to say, I want to get out, I want to change my room because the air conditioning is no good, then the people may say, I'll go and fix your aircon, I'll do certain things. But if it happens to be one of the room numbers that are listed there, you do not question.
Oh my god.
I got like chills.
I actually
For some
got chills,
reason.
So I think hotels are very good locations for movies.
They are.
They actually
They
are.
are.
Yeah.
Ooh, wow. We got to have you back on our Halloween episode to speak about ghost stories in hotels.
Well, I can be happily telling you, the Mandai Resort by Banyan Tree is opening in Mandai next year, so we can. During Halloween, we'll probably have a lot of ghost stories with animals and other
it's so
stuff.
fun. Yeah.
That's actually
Okay. Okay. Let's move on to the last question for today, and I think this is the one that you have been looking forward to the most to answer.
Yes.
Pris, take it away.
Okay, so we have a reader named Willow, and Willow asks, how can you tell if a person actually likes you as much as they say, or if they're just playing with you to get the validation they need? Like, what do you mean you kissed me 10 times, but I still don't know if you really like me back? Like, am I crazy and insane? Do I need a lobotomy? Like, what is going on? Can he just marry me at this point? Also, he says he doesn't want to date because he's not ready for a relationship yet, but we're literally just doing couple things at this point without a label. God help us all. So Willow is asking, how can you tell if a person actually likes you or they're just doing it for themselves?
I can see this is a moment that KP has regretted for coming on this podcast.
Well, you're asking. Well, the first thing I was going to ask you if I could equally rude, and you may
No, go ahead. Please do.
okay, doing what?
Doing what? Okay.
Yeah. Whether he's liking, whether this
Yeah.
guy's doing
I think just like
doing
couple
it.
couple things. Like maybe okay,
Holding
maybe
hands.
they're
They're
treating
talking about holding hands and
maybe
all that.
holding hands or
This
like
is,
the
this
way.
is teeny bopper type stuff. I'm a grandfather by now.
Yeah,
God,
but
you
I
wanted me
mean-
to advise on teeny bopper stuff?
Yes,
Actually, I
please
should
do.
because my youngest grandson's is 9. Give him a
Okay.
few more years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll have to give him
I
advice.
have to give him advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know how it was like back in the days, but actually,
Excuse me.
back
Hey,
in the
hey.
golden years,
Hey, no, hold on. Back in the days.
back in the days, golden years, like
Okay, you
Yeah.
got yourself in a difficult position. I'd like to see you extricate.
okay, yes,
My life as a romantic youngster
yes, as a romantic
was as
youngster.
romantic as your life as a romantic youngster. My wife and I were doing all the exciting things that
Yeah.
you guys are doing now.
Yeah.
So do not write us off as
Okay, my bad.
back in the
Back in the
days.
days.
Yes, sorry.
But was situationships a thing back then? I think this sounds a lot like a situationship. Are you guys familiar with situationships?
Do you know what a situation
or maybe
is?
it's a,
JP?
yeah.
Well, I know what a situation is. I know what a relationship is. I don't know,
Two and two together.
whether what is a situation.
I'm slightly older than Pris, so maybe I can bridge this.
Okay, what's a
generation.
situationship?
Do you know? Do you have a Facebook profile, or have you used Facebook before?
My children have put me onto Facebook so that I can read other people's.
Okay.
I've never posted anything on Facebook.
Okay, then we might struggle here. But on Facebook, you can set your relationship status.
Yeah, you're single or you're
Yes.
Yeah.
That I
Yeah.
know. My
And
kids
then-
do that and suddenly change from
Single
taken to not take, single to taken or whatever it is.
Yeah,
Correct?
and there's one option on the relationship status called "It's complicated."
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what a situationship is. It's like
Yeah, but that's
it's
no
a
different than in my time. Except we didn't have Facebook, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But whether you are in you're in no situation, or you are in a serious situation, or it's complicated, has existed for hundreds of years since Shakespeare's
Okay.
time. It's just that we
Yeah.
didn't have internet and Facebook.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay. So
Okay, it's just the label. The label is new.
so
but the
situationship
concept
means
is
it's
not new.
complicated. Is
Yes.
it?
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah, not
yeah.
it's yeah. They have this guy hasn't committed to Willow yet.
Yes.
But I guess he's cashing all the checks without having committed to the relationship.
But
Yeah.
honestly, seriously, that you're only talking about different labels that you have now. But on a serious note, human relations have been the same for hundreds of years,
Yep.
but expressed differently.
Yeah.
So whether it is a complicated situation where one is more committed than to the other, one loves the other one doesn't love so much, it's not an equal relationship, whether it is a very strong one or whether it's a relationship that has already gotten tired, these are basically age-old situations.
Right.
So, but to interpret the question there, you're basically saying that this person is essentially very uncertain about how the other person feels about. It's a her asking that question, right?
Yeah.
Because it's him kissing her 10 times and then she don't know whether he's ready to commit and so on, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that problem has existed from my parents' times to my time to your times and to my grandchildren's time.
Do you have experience with this problem?
Well, I'm not the girl, so.
as a guy.
Oh, you're the guy.
As the guy. No, I do not lead people on. I
Okay.
don't play with emotions.
Yeah.
I'm not a Casanova. So when I express my emotions, I think it's pretty genuine.
Yeah.
I think though, this does represent a problem that exists today, even in a so-called feminist age.
Okay.
From a work point of view, the whole world has become feminized, right? Women's rights and so on in everything is pretty much accepted as being equal. The unfortunate thing is that in romantic relationships, it hasn't become that way at all. It's always, I think, 9 times out of 10, it's the woman waiting for the man to propose marriage. 9 times out of 10, it's the man who has to take the lead to show interest in the woman. And if the woman wants to show interest in a man, it's somehow seen as being overly aggressive. So I guess my point here is that, my first point here is that it goes to show in a way that while equality and the soul sexual revolution and so on has resulted in many things where there's equality, in the most fundamental of relationships, which is the personal romantic relationship, it's still very difficult to be a woman because you have to wait and guess, what does the man want? And that's really quite unfair. I see it today as it was a long time ago. It's somehow still not socially accepted for women to really take the first step towards the man. Because the man would take it wrongly.
Yeah.
The woman has to wait. So my first point is that I think it's quite unfortunate that this writer has to still try to interpret what is the man's responses or reaction to her actions, not responses, in fact the actions to her. What do they mean? Is he serious? Is he not serious? That's a 1950s question, right? But it's still happening today.
Yeah.
So that's actually quite unfortunate, but there's nothing we can change, and I don't think that's changing. The second one is, what then can she do about it? And I think the answer is probably what grandmothers have given and mothers have given as advice back to 100 years ago, right? And that is that you have to probably decide that you are not going to be totally passive. In the old days, really, really, really old days, in Asian societies and elsewhere,
How do you know about that?
I watch movies. The woman has to be totally passive, right? The man has to watch Bridgerton and so on. The woman has to be the one who just has to interpret what does the man want to do. And at most she can just give little signals of this or that, but she's totally passive. A wink of this and then confide in the other girlfriend, oh my God, he kissed me the other day. Is he really serious about it or not? I guess my point now is that because of the first thing I said, which is that somehow it is still culturally not acceptable for women to take the lead. So that is going to be the case. But what has to change now is that this woman here has to decide for herself the right timing when she has to basically put it to the test and put it to the guy. How serious are you? I'm not going to be led on by your romance and so on. What do you mean? If she doesn't care about it, fine. I mean, just go along.
Yeah.
But obviously she cares. But she's still reacting in the old way, right? Which is sort of like passive. What am I going to do about it? Confide in the girls. And my point is, you've got to take control in your hands, your life in your own hands, and basically put it to him. What the F are you doing? and I take it from there. Are you playing with me or you're not playing with me?
Yeah.
You decide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I read in your book about. Oh, sorry. Did you?
No.
I read in your book about how you pick business partners.
My wife is not a business partner. Well, she is a business partner.
She is a
of
business
course.
partner. But is there a difference between? Is there a difference between how you pick a business? What's the difference between picking a business partner and a life partner?
Duh.
Do you apply the same rules?
Do you want to ask that? You really, my God, if I were to say that marrying my wife was a business decision, first of all, there's a huge difference, right?
Yeah.
You make, the biggest difference is this. I choose business partners from a totally 150% rational point of view.
Okay.
I choose business partners with a high degree of not certitude, but with preparation in advance, that should it not end well, should it not go well, I have a resolution already in mind. I tell that to my children and everybody else. A business partner, I do not call it a marriage.
Okay.
It is a partnership which probably has more chances of failure than success. So when you form a business partnership, you form that partnership not because you like the guy and the other people there, you form it because it has strategic rationale for your company, but recognize also that because it's a business partnership, the players in it change very often. They go off the scene. You're prepared and you're well prepared should it have to end, and you are able to end it. The difference with a life partner is that, and the huge difference with a life partner is that it is not at the end of the day a rational decision with a SWOT analysis and a pros and cons. Choosing a life partner is similar to what I said to you about my initial decision when I was 20 years old, deciding to come back to Singapore. It is a decision that you make knowing all the risks you are going to take, and then deciding at the end of the day that I'm going to take that risk, come what way.
Yeah.
And that's it. You cannot make a decision on your life partner based on listing the attributes. And the trouble is, too many young people do look at that because they try to be rational. And they say, does he have all these ticks? And that's, of course, it's important.
Yeah.
But a lot of people now say, does the guy have a good job? Is he likely to make $100,000 in 2 years? Does he come from a good family? Is he tick? Do I get along with him well? Does he do this or do well that? At the end of the day, and as you get older and older, the choices are going to be less. I mean, my advice obviously is don't go and marry the first boyfriend or girlfriend you have. That's like to be totally driven by emotion.
Yeah.
My second advice is that you should certainly live with your partner before you make it. And I lived with my wife.
Yeah.
Before we got married, because it's a rational thing. How do you know what life is like living together every day rather than just meeting for romantic circumstances? But ultimately, when you do choose your partner, it's almost a leap of faith.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference.
How long have you been married to your wife, Claire, now?
47 years.
Okay, wow. Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
So my question about that is, having been married for 47 years, what do you think is the single most important value that she has, or characteristic, that she has, or that you have, that has made the marriage last that long?
I think it's a very healthy respect for our differences and a intentional attempt to strengthen the commonalities between us. Meaning that if you think that in life your life partner is going to be always exactly the same as you, it's not going to be successful. And you want them to be like you want to be like alter egos of each other, it's not going to work. You have to know, how are they different from you, and how do you respect that difference, even in terms of personality and in terms of interest in life. You have to respect that. So you have to have your own space.
Yep.
But the danger is, at the same time, too many people begin then to respect their own space, and then they start to live separate lives. Sleep on the same bed, but have different dreams, as the saying goes. So you have to do two at the same time. You have to have a healthy respect that you each do your own thing, but at the same time, you have to know what are your common loves, what are your common interests, besides just children, what are your intellectual interests, what are your movie interests, what are this, what are that, so that you build upon those commonalities. So I think with that, you can actually last a long time.
Wow.
So we welcome you to our 50th anniversary.
Maybe for the 50th, we got to have both you and Claire on.
Yeah.
the podcast.
She's made me promise we'll have a renewal of vows at our 50th anniversary.
Man. Okay, well, you told us ghost stories.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a love story? How did you and Claire meet? How did you decide to propose to her?
Okay, the proposal first. I thought was very romantic. She didn't think so.
Okay, go on. We'll be the judge. We'll judge.
Yeah.
You better say it's romantic. We had been living together, and that's another small aside, very interesting story about wise mothers. Claire comes from a very, very traditional Hainanese family.
Okay.
Her mother is very traditional.
Yeah.
And we were living together in a rented place, Wessex Estate, which had one study room with a small bed on it, and where we were living together, which is a king bed, all on the floor, the kind of hippie life existence.
Yeah.
And her mother came to visit us, and her mother, being very traditional but very wise, came in and looked at the room. She saw the bedroom and she saw the study room. She said, "Oh, Kwon Ping, I see where you sleep. Very nice room where you sleep. And this is where Singo, which is Claire, sleeps." I mean, she was basically, she knew obviously we were sleeping on the same bed,
Yeah.
living together, but she was basically acknowledging for herself openly that you're both sleeping in different rooms. That's kind of wisdom of a very traditional
Yeah.
mother
Yeah.
who sort of has to balance her own sense of values with the reality of life.
Yeah.
But anyway, we were living together in another rented house when I was detained. And during my entire detention, after my confession and so on, my parents could visit me until my release. There's no, after confession, you have to confess first. Before then, nothing happens to you. You're not allowed to see anybody. But during that whole time, even after confession and so on, I was not allowed to see anybody but my parents on a weekly basis. I couldn't see Claire because she was no locus standi, as it were, no status as a girlfriend. So when I came out and we went back to the house we were living in together, after a few days, I thought I was being very romantic. And I said, hey, if I get detained again, I might not be able to see you until we get married. So how about we get married?
Oh my.
No flowers?
No flowers.
No
So
ring.
that was the proposal.
Yeah. You don't think it's romantic?
No.
Wow.
Sorry.
Look, it was like,
Did
if
you
I
get
get
on your
detained,
knees?
if I get detained again, which I might, we can meet each other
Yay.
because we'll be married. Not romantic, huh?
Ooh.
I think it's very practical. It is very practical though. Like,
me,
I
it was
mean,
very
it is very
romantic.
logical.
It was like, it was romantic because I was all the time in jail. I wasn't thinking about my parents. I was thinking of
About her.
Yeah.
But did you pose it that way when you said it?
Yeah.
It wasn't like, hurry up, let's go. I might be detained soon.
No. I just said it that way. And then we actually got married. And this is the practical part. I know a lot of guys forget their anniversaries, right?
Oh.
Okay. We chose a date where I could never forget. It was 7-7-7-7.
7th?
7/7/1977. We got ROM, Registry of Marriage, ROM registered on that date.
Yeah.
And then the following year in 1978, we got the Chinese customary dinner and so on. So for 1 year, we were actually married without the customary chamcha, the tea ceremony and so on. So, yeah.
Would you accept a proposal like that, Pris?
I don't know. I mean, okay, wait. If I really love the person and I do see a future with the person, I'll let it slide. But I'll probably tell him like 3 years down the
But
road.
how do you know I wasn't cradling her head and stroking her head? It's like,
It's
the context, right? I
the
was
situation.
Yeah, I don't want to get
Yeah.
into that personal.
Okay.
But frankly,
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty romantic, and now you're siding with Claire. So that's how did I propose? That's how I proposed.
Okay, okay, before we get to how you and Claire met, I wanted to ask, because she said that she wants a renewal of vows. Will you have to do a proposal for the renewal of vows? And will it be maybe more elaborate than your original proposal?
Oh, this renewal of vows is going to be like a mass wedding. We're going to decide that
Yeah.
all my senior colleagues, like it or not, they're going to join in. There's going to be a parade of elephants. We'll be sitting on top of the elephants. We're going to do it in Laguna Phuket with a whole procession.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
No,
will there
I'm
be a
not serious,
proposal?
okay? So, will there be a proposal?
Yeah. Since you didn't like the first one.
Considering.
Yes.
Sorry.
He just got the idea.
Yeah, he just got the idea.
Of course.
Okay.
No, I thought, the reason is because I thought if it's a renewal of vows, it's actually quite interesting because we actually never had vows because we didn't have a Christian wedding. We went to the registrar of marriages, and now what I do remember well was that we couldn't stop laughing.
Okay. Why?
And we were sent out of the room to stop our laughter because you have to read that thing. And have you ever? You guys are married or not?
No.
You haven't read that. Have you read it? Are you guys married? Did you have to go to ROM or not? You have to read that statement. It's a very funny statement. So
Can you tell us a
It's
little
what's
bit?
the
a contract
statement?
or
Yeah.
something? Or?
no, it's just very serious, and you have
Okay.
to. It's kind of you have to read this vows to each other,
Yeah.
and for some odd reason, maybe because we were nervous or whether we couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah. I mean, okay, I have to ask you, you were doing protests a lot in America. You're a hardened criminal. Was this laughter aided by any substances?
I am offended. An upright, righteous person like myself who would never break the law. No.
No. Okay.
And the quite honestly, the subtext to that is, if I were ever arrested for any of those things, although I don't think that they are wrong,
yeah.
okay, I would probably be a little bit more embarrassed or ashamed. Whereas for political reasons, I'm never ashamed because they are things I deeply believe in. If I were a great, great advocate of the decriminalization of marijuana and I was openly advocating it and they found that I was sort of high on something or the other, then I should not be ashamed of it. But because I don't have any strong views about it, but I certainly believe that in anything where I don't have strong views, I am law-abiding, then I would be ashamed if I broke the law, just like I would be quite ashamed if I broke the law and I was arrested for drunk driving, for example. I'm more ashamed to be arrested for drunk driving than I am to be detained for things that I believe were just espousing my own views. So no. Long and short answer is I was not under the influence of anything except love. Not bad, huh?
Okay, thank you for humoring my question. Okay, back to the love story. How did you and Claire meet? Did you have to ask her to go steady?
No.
Okay.
There was no such practice in those days. We met, we first met without my knowing when I was in the army. And an army colleague of mine brought me to a friend of his, the house. She was living in Little India in a little walk-up shop house. And so I went to the house and I apparently must have met Claire then without even knowing it. But then that we didn't exchange any words or anything. And later on, that same friend, after I left the army, introduced me to her again at a place called Salad Bowl at Center Point, which has long been torn down. And romantic. I thought, wow, this is a pretty cute girl. So I was riding a motorbike in those days.
Oh, wow.
So I asked her to ride my motorbike. Yeah. And anybody ride a motorbike? You guys know.
I'm taking lessons. I'm almost there.
If you ride a motorbike, you must remember to jerk a little bit so that she has to grab you a bit more and more. Okay. So she did all that. Yeah.
Don't worry, there's a lot of jerking on my motorbike.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, then, so we rode a motorbike and we, then after a while, I told her I was living in this house with other housemates, some of whom have become very eminent people. So I don't want to bring them embarrassment by telling them how eminent they are today. We were sharing a house. So I used all kinds of typical guy excuses. I'm living in a house and I don't know how to cook. Can you help me cook a meal? All these ruses that a guy has to use. Yeah. And so one thing led to another, and then we ended up living together in that house with other housemates. And that was a place where I got detained. And that was quite a traumatic time for us because all her friends left her, were very ashamed of her and all that. And she stood by me very, very strongly, even when there were a lot of bad things, rumors about who I was and so on. Things she never knew. She didn't know about my life in America, and they distorted it completely to make me seem like this really horrible guy. Yeah. But then when I came out, we moved out, then we moved to just live together, just the two of us at a rental place. And it went on from there. But I think besides the nice part about how we first met is another story about how the name Banyan Tree came about. And that's because when we first got married and I left Singapore after 1 year of being released, because I was not allowed to be to leave anywhere until after 1 year. After 1 year, I got permission from the government. I went to Hong Kong. And I didn't want to have any family support, so I had to work as a journalist. And Claire was a master's student in Hong Kong U, so didn't have any income. So we couldn't live on Hong Kong Island. We couldn't live in Kowloon. We could only afford to live in a little fishing village on Lama Island. Okay. And that fishing village was called, in Cantonese, Yong Shui Wan, which in Mandarin is 榕树湾, which in English is Banyan Tree Bay.
Oh.
So we lived there for about 3 years, having very little money. And I was a journalist and she was a student. And those were pretty much, for us, and still remain the most idyllic years of romantic life together, because the life in Singapore was really very traumatic, of course, because of things that happened. And here you are living just as a romantic couple without money, but really great life in a fishing village where there are no cars and nothing. And when we decided much later to name the enterprise that we had, we decided to call it Banyan Tree to symbolize that luxury is not about bling bling things, which people associate with Banyan Tree, but it's about the romance and intimacy between people and the connections between people. So all along, where we live and what we do and where we live now is a continuation of where you live and how you live is itself a expression of your values.
What is it like to work with your wife and start a business with your wife?
I think it can be. I'm asked that quite a bit.
Yeah.
Because of other people who have the same situation. I think it can be the best of times and the worst of times. Truly.
Okay.
Meaning it can be the best of times because here you are with a life partner who you have romantic things to talk about. You have children things to talk about. You have so many things to talk about. But on top of it, you have a common aspiration for your life goals in business and in work. And as we all know, work, not just business, but work takes up half your life. So if you have that, it can be the best of times because you can really have so many common things to aspire and work towards, and you can also have incredible support. And it's also a mutual relationship where my wife has put it really well. She says that I build the house, she makes it a home.
Okay.
And that's actually a very good reflection of what we mutually do. I'm responsible for the actual physical architecture, the financial architecture, the business architecture. But Banyan Tree today would be a very successful but emotionally empty place if not for the fact that with the management academy that she's heading, she's doing all the learning and development. She's developing all the culture that binds us together. She makes it a home. I built the house.
Yeah.
So that's where you really have that synergy. It can also be the most dangerous of times because when you do have inevitably arguments, as all couples have, it's intensified and amplified by the fact that it's also work comes into it too. So you have to learn how to navigate that by beginning. The first thing is to decide where are the mutual areas where you're going to give not say total autonomy to the other person, but a lot more freedom, like what she wants to do regarding the management academy and so on.
Okay.
She asked me for advice, but it's her show.
Yeah.
On the business side, of course, I ask a lot of advice, but it's my show. So you've got to navigate that clearly. Otherwise, it can lead to deep misunderstandings and tensions also.
I see. Do you guys still make like the big business decisions together?
Big decisions on people, absolutely.
Yeah. Like, is that like hiring kind of thing? So when you say on people, what do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, for example, what do we, just like people probably not sufficiently aware about it, but Mrs. Lee Kuan Yew was very influential regarding the people aspect of Mr. Lee's government in those days.
Yeah.
So yes, people, we bounce off ideas very much about people. If it's super big decisions like whether to sell the company or not, then of course she has to be very much involved.
Yeah.
But it's straightforward business decisions, increase of capital and land loans and so on, which a board of directors is very much involved in. I probably consult her, but then it's the board that makes the governance call.
Okay.
But I would say game-changing decisions, clearly, I would discuss it with her very much beforehand.
Yeah.
Because we're in it together.
Yeah. And I think to give her further plaudits. I think I read in the book that she kind of built in practices in Banyan Tree that would allow women to, not hit a glass ceiling or not hit a ceiling in terms of their career progression.
I would say Claire has been strongest on two issues. One is the whole sustainability issue, but that's besides sustainability. That's what makes us a home. That's what makes our associates so proud to be doing what we're doing. So she's headed the Banyan Tree Global Foundation, which is a foundation for sustainability.
Yeah.
She's clearly been heading that up all along, and she started Banyan Tree Gallery, which is in fact not just a money-making retail gallery. It's a place where we've been practicing working with villages and so on long ago. So CSR, or corporate social responsibility, that has been her big thing. Whereas money matters and so on, I've been more or less dealing with, right? Yeah, she's very involved in the things that matter, mainly with people and the soul of the company.
Okay, we've talked about lots of stories and lots of insights from KP throughout this episode. If you want to get more of it, the place to find them would be this book, Behind the Banyan. You didn't write this book. It was written about you, but you fully endorse it?
Well, I have being an ex-journalist.
Yeah.
I have a commitment to freedom of expression.
Yes.
So I have never censored it.
Okay.
The deal with Aaron and I, when he wrote the book, was that he would interview me, and I only have the right of pointing out factual errors.
Okay.
So I would say everything that's factual in there is true.
there.
Yeah.
How he chooses to interpret things is his choice and my problem.
So there you hear, it's 100% factual, but very subjective. But honestly, I've given the book a read. It's the first 5 chapters, all about KP's life story. Really interesting stuff. You can hear about his badass days as a rebel and a criminal. Sorry, I keep calling you a hardened criminal. I hope you forgive me for that. And then the rest of the book after that, a bunch of insights that he has about business, about life, about leadership. I actually found the chapter about leadership quite very, very interesting, and that was written as like a question and answer interview portion. So if you're interested in those kind of things, I think for anyone who's interested in starting a business, being an entrepreneur, very good book to pick up and to read. Very easy to read as well, I must say. Very easy to read. Okay, yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I learned a lot of new terminology.
Yeah, I mean, we always try and give back to our guests.
Yeah. So next time, don't delulu me.
He was someone delulued him to come onto this show.
Yeah. I cannot say I'm in a business situationship, can I?
Oh, I guess you could. If
That's
it's
wrong.
like-
You could.
Business situation.
Yeah.
You
It's
could.
different from.
No, you
No.
could. You could.
Yeah.
You could.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Okay, that's all we have time for on this episode of Help Desk. This episode is powered by Audio-Technica. We'll catch you in the next one. See you guys.